Why was the wind always against her? It screamed across the Montana training range like a thing alive, carrying snow and bitterness through the pines, threatening to scatter her concentration the way it scattered powder from the Staff Sergeant Maria lay prone in the freezing dirt, her rifle pressed into her shoulder as if it were part of her body. She had been here before, on ranges, on mountainsides, on hunts as a girl in Montana. But this moment was different. This shot wasn't just about a paper target. It was about being believed. The target was 1,200 yards away, a blur of white against the snow-drenched hillside. Wind gusts of 30 miles an hour tore through the valley. Visibility was collapsing. To most, the target was barely even visible. To Maria, it was the last barrier standing between her and the respect she'd been chasing for years. She listened as Sergeant First Class Mills barked above the storm. His voice was iron cutting through the cold. Visibility's dropping fast. Anyone who can hit center mass in these conditions deserves a damn medal. The other snipers had already taken their shots. 7 men, all older, all bigger, all certain they were better. 3 clean misses, 2 barely nicking the outer edge, 2 scraping points with lucky hits. Their glances told her everything. She wasn't supposed to succeed. She wasn't supposed to even be here. Maria pressed her cheek against the cold stock of her custom-built .300 Winchester Magnum. The rifle didn't care who held it. Male, female, believer, skeptic. It only knew precision, discipline, respect. Her breathing slowed, steady and rhythmic, the way her grandfather had taught her as a child. She could hear him even now, the echo of his rasping whisper as he guided her small hands on a rifle bigger than she was. The rifle doesn't know you're a girl, but the animal sure as hell will know if you miss. That voice steadied her as she studied the flags snapping violently in the distance. She calculated wind drift in her head, factoring in the chill that would bend her bullet, the elevation that would pull it down, the erratic gusts that tried to make the shot impossible. She wasn't just fighting the conditions. She was fighting decades of doubt, every sideways glance in the barracks, every whisper at training camps, every quiet dismissal that said she didn't belong. Her finger touched the trigger, smooth, controlled, no rush, no fear. The rifle roared. The mountains answered with thunder. Through the scope she followed the bullet's arc. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. Then the target exploded into splinters dead center. A hush fell behind her, then the disbelief broke through. "Holy shit," someone whispered. Mills lowered his spotting scope, his face hard, unreadable, but his voice betrayed awe. "Check that target." Moments later, confirmation crackled back over the radio. "Perfect. X-ring, clean center shot." Maria kept her face to the scope, unwilling to let them see even a flicker of satisfaction. She had made thousands of shots like this before, but this one mattered. This one would either open doors or slam them shut. When she finally looked up, Mills was standing over her. He said slowly, "In 23 years of training military snipers, I've seen 4 people make that shot. 4. You just made it look easy." "It wasn't easy, Sergeant," she answered quietly, her voice carrying the calm certainty of someone who had fought for every inch of ground she stood on. "But my grandfather always said, if you're not shooting in bad weather, you're not really learning." The men around her, grizzled, older, stared with something between respect and resentment. They hadn't expected her to succeed. They certainly hadn't expected her to outshoot them. Maria was a 5'6" woman in a world built for men, and she had just shattered their comfort. "Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" one of them finally asked. "Montana," she said simply, beginning the ritual of cleaning her rifle. "My grandfather owned a ranch. He taught me when I was 12. She let them picture elk hunts and long winters. She didn't tell them about the nights alone in the dark, waiting with her grandfather's old rifle for coyotes threatening their cattle. She didn't tell them about lying in the rain, in snow, in blistering heat, training herself to hit targets no one else thought possible. She didn't tell them about her brother and the coffin draped in a flag. Some truths were her own. Behind her, Mills spoke in a low voice to Master Sergeant. She wasn't supposed to hear, but the wind carried their words to her. She can shoot, admitted. But can she kill? Mills replied. That's what worries me. Targets are one thing, people are another. When you're looking through that scope at someone's father, someone's son, that's when you find out what someone's made of. The words cut deep. Maria had heard them before. She would hear them again. The belief that being female meant she wasn't capable of pulling the trigger when it mattered, that compassion and lethality couldn't coexist, that she could train, excel, surpass, but in the end her gender disqualified her from the most brutal truth of war. She didn't argue, she didn't try to defend herself. Instead, she thought of her brother, her hero. She thought of the blast in Iraq that took him, the folded flag at his funeral, the way her mother's hands shook as they held it. She thought of the men who built bombs in the dark, waiting to tear families apart like hers, and she knew what she was made of. The snow fell harder, blanketing her footprints as she packed her rifle. The other men talked, laughed, traded stories of near misses and lucky hits. She remained silent, shouldering her gear, walking alone toward the barracks. Mills caught up to her. He said, his tone shifting. You've got a gift, but gifts aren't enough in this business. Psychological evaluations next week, then combat simulation. That's when we'll find out if you've got what it takes. Maria met his eyes, steady, unflinching. I'm ready, Sergeant. I've been ready my whole life. The wind howled again, carrying the echoes of distant rifle fire across the mountains. Somewhere out there, other soldiers were learning to kill. Soon, she would join them or be cast aside. She pulled her jacket, disappearing into the snowstorm. Behind her, the shredded target flapped in the wind. To some, it was proof of her skill. To Maria, it was a declaration. A declaration that she was done asking for permission to belong. But what she didn't know yet, what no one knew, was that this single shot would be the beginning of something larger than her, larger than the men who doubted her, larger even than the mission ahead. Within months, her skills would be tested in ways no training ground could prepare her for. And when the time came, when the doubts reached their loudest, when the commander who would soon lead her into Afghanistan slammed his fist against a table and demanded to know why a woman had been chosen to cover his team, Maria would remember this moment. The wind, the snow, the disbelief on their faces. She would remember that sometimes silence was the sharpest answer. Sometimes dignity didn't argue, it simply acted. And when she acted, history would remember. How do you trust a stranger with your life? Commander Jake stared at the personnel file lying open on his desk, the name burning into his mind like a scar. Staff Sergeant Maria, age 23, advanced marksmanship instructor, recommended for immediate deployment as primary sniper support for Operation Crosswind. He slammed his fist against the metal desk so hard his coffee mug toppled, spilling across classified documents and maps. The liquid spread like a stain across the mission plans, his mission plans. And in that moment, the veteran SEAL commander felt something he hated more than anything else: uncertainty. Are you out of your goddamn minds? His voice shook the canvas walls of the command tent at Airfield. Soldiers passing outside flinched and hurried their steps. Across from him, Colonel Daniel sat calmly, the picture of patience. He had served alongside for years. He had expected this storm. Jake was old-school military, hardened by Iraq, by Syria, by places so dark they would never be spoken of in public. He was also stubborn as iron when it came to change. Jake said evenly, "Sit down, listen to me." But couldn't sit. He paced the confined space like a caged predator. His face was flushed, his jaw clenched. Crosswind isn't some training exercise. We're talking about infiltrating a Taliban stronghold in the Kandahar Mountains. My boys' lives depend on Overwatch. And you're telling me we're trusting that to someone who's never seen combat? Flipped through the file in his hands. Line after line of achievements, scores, recommendations. Her marksmanship scores are unprecedented. She's completed every advanced course the Army offers, including the target interdiction course that breaks 90% of candidates. Her evaluations show resilience under pressure, decision-making far beyond her years. She's not just good, Jake, she's exceptional. Exceptional on paper, shot back. His voice dropped to a growl. But paper doesn't bleed. Paper doesn't scream. Paper doesn't choke when the first round snaps overhead. I've seen it happen. Perfect shooters in training who couldn't pull the trigger when it was real. And you want me to bet my team's lives on someone who learned shooting deer in Montana? His jaw tightened. Prejudice was showing, but he let the words hang for a moment. That someone, said finally, has outshot every veteran we've put her against in 5 years. She's faster, more accurate, more disciplined. You've lost men before, Jake. You know as well as I do that skill matters more than size, gender, or reputation. The words struck deep. His gaze shifted to the photograph pinned on the wall, a team picture from 3 months ago. 12 men smiling in dusty uniforms, their faces frozen in youth and confidence. 10 were still alive. 2 were not. Staff Sergeant Tommy, the best sniper had ever known, stood in the center, his grin boyish, his rifle balanced casually against his shoulder. Next to him, Corporal Mike Eagle Eye, whose steady hand had saved life more than once. Both were gone. Both killed when their convoy hit a roadside bomb outside Helmand Province. His voice softened, but only slightly. I've lost too many good men already. Could thread a needle at 1,000 yards in a sandstorm. Once hit a bomber through a window the size of a shoebox before he could detonate. They're dead now. And you want me to replace them with someone who's never pulled a trigger in anger. Stood, patience thinning. Jake, the Secretary of Defense himself, recommended for this assignment. Her instructors call her once in a generation. The Joint Chiefs believe she represents the future of military sniping. The Joint Chiefs, spat, aren't crawling through Taliban compounds at 3 in the morning. They aren't explaining to mothers why their sons came home in boxes because some rookie sniper froze. For a long moment, the tent filled only with the hum of electronics and the distant thrum of helicopters returning from night missions. Finally pulled out a laptop. Before you make your decision, watch this. The screen flickered to life. A thermal scope view filled the frame. Targets appeared, silhouettes moving through a simulated village. Then one by one they fell, some at 1,200 meters, some in rapid bursts less than 2 seconds apart. 13 targets in under 4 minutes. No misses. His tactical mind couldn't help but analyze. The timing, the precision, the calm transitions. Every shot was deliberate, surgical. The record for this scenario had been 9 targets in 7 minutes, had shattered it. He leaned back slowly, his jaw tight. She can shoot, he admitted grudgingly. But shooting targets isn't shooting people. A screen doesn't cry. A mannequin doesn't bleed. Closed the laptop. His eyes softened. Jake, there's something not in her file. Her brother was killed by an IED in Iraq. He was a medic trying to save the wounded when the bomb went off. She didn't join for glory. She didn't join for career. She joined to stop other families from going through what hers did. Silence. Felt that silence in his bones. He understood loss. He carried it every day in names etched into his memory, in faces frozen in photographs. He understood rage too, the kind that drove soldiers to act, but motivation was a double-edged blade. Personal revenge, he said finally. It can be as dangerous as hesitation. Emotional soldiers make mistakes. The decision's been made, said firmly. Is your sniper, how you integrate her is up to you, but she goes. The colonel walked out into the Afghan night, leaving alone with the file. Jake stared at the photograph clipped to the front page. A young woman with dark, intelligent eyes, determination etched across her face. A face he didn't trust. Not yet. But in less than 48 hours, in the mountains of Kandahar, he would find out if Maria was everything her file claimed she was, or if his team would pay the price. Meanwhile, on the other side of the base, Maria prepared in silence. She checked her rifle, every piece of gear, every bullet. She knew doubted her. She felt it even before meeting him, but she also knew something he didn't. She wasn't afraid of pulling the trigger. She was afraid of failing those who depended on her. And that fear would keep her sharper than any man who thought she didn't belong. How do you earn trust in a world where doubt is the air you breathe? The Hindu Kush mountains loomed like jagged teeth against the pale Afghan sky, peaks stabbing into clouds that promised another brutal night. At 8,000 feet above sea level, the thin air made even seasoned operators gasp during exertion. But for Staff Sergeant Maria, the thinness felt familiar. She, grown up in the Montana Rockies. Thin air didn't scare her. Men's silence did. From her sniper's hide behind a granite outcropping, she listened to the comms crackle. Commander Jake's voice came through steady, controlled, wrapped in the tone of a man who had no room for mistakes. Overwatch 1, this is Alpha Leader. Report your status. Maria pressed her eye to her rifle scope, the world narrowing into lines of shadow and movement. The valley below lay spread out in shades of green through her night vision. Rocks, ridges, and the faint heat signatures of men pretending to be enemies. Alpha Leader, Overwatch 1 has clear sight lines to target zones Alpha through Delta. No movement detected. No movement yet. For the past week, it had been like this. Training exercises that felt more real every day. SEAL team practiced infiltration and extraction under cover of darkness, while Maria tracked them from above, her rifle scope sweeping for threats. Every scenario grew more complex: ambushes, flanking maneuvers, enemy snipers hidden in shadow. Each time, she was forced to prove not just her shooting but her ability to think, anticipate, and act like she'd been part of this team her entire life. The truth was harsher. She wasn't part of the team, not yet. Below her, Petty Officer Danny "Ghost" Martinez crept through darkness like his namesake, his movements fluid and quiet. Martinez was point man, and he had made his skepticism clear from the start. "New blood always thinks they're smarter than the old hands," he'd muttered within earshot. "We'll see how long that confidence lasts when bullets fly." Maria ignored him. She always did. Words were cheap. Performance was everything. "Contact left," Martinez's whisper slid across the net. "Two tangos moving toward primary objective." Maria's scope snapped left. Two figures appeared as heat signatures weaving through rocks, another SEAL team playing the role of Taliban fighters. 400 meters. An easy shot in daylight, trickier in windswept night. She exhaled once. "I have eyes on targets. Request permission to engage." There was a pause, a long one. Silence was deliberate, and she knew it. He wasn't just testing her aim. He was testing her restraint, testing whether she would break under the weight of responsibility. Finally, his voice returned. "Overwatch 1, you are cleared to engage." The words settled her. Her breathing slowed into the rhythm her grandfather had taught her. Patience, precision, no hurry. The mountain doesn't care if you rush. Her first shot cracked through the canyon, dropping the lead target with surgical accuracy. Before the echo faded, she adjusted and fired again. The second heat signature flared, sensors confirming another perfect hit. "Two tango down," Martinez said. His tone carried something he hadn't meant to let slip: surprise. But Maria had no time to savor it. Movement flashed in her scope, far side of the valley. 3 more heat signatures attempting to flank's team. Range, 900 meters, gusting crosswind, limited visibility, difficult shots, the kind that separated average marksmen from legends. "Alpha Leader, I have 3 more contacts. Northeast flank, range 900, difficult angle. Can you take them?" Voice was flat. He wasn't asking. He was daring her to fail. "Affirmative, engaging now." Her first shot landed center mass, the target sensor blinking red before the man crumpled to the dirt. The second was trickier, her quarry weaving between cover, cautious, skilled. Maria's finger tightened only when instinct told her the man would break cover. The shot found him before he realized he was already dead. The third was the hardest. This one moved like a survivor, erratic, unpredictable, refusing to stay still. She tracked him, reading his rhythm. When he finally sprinted between rocks, her bullet caught him. The radio erupted with a sharp intake of breath from someone on's team. No words, just disbelief. The exercise dragged on for 2 more hours. Each scenario built pressure like weights added one by one to her shoulders. Reinforcements appeared from unexpected angles. Maria dropped them. Enemy snipers flashed muzzles in shadow. She countered them with cold efficiency. Each shot she took was not just eliminating a target. Each shot was another argument against every whispered doubt. By dawn, the mountains blazed with pink and gold. The team regrouped at the extraction point, their movements slowed by exhaustion. Maria felt their eyes on her as she cleaned her rifle. Not admiration, not yet, but something had shifted. Skepticism wasn't so easy anymore. Sergeant First Class Tony Bear Williams, the demolitions expert, approached her. He was a wall of a man, his voice rough as gravel. "That counter-sniper shot," he scratched his jaw. "That was something else. I've seen plenty of shooters. That was special." Maria met his gaze, steady, calm. "Just doing my job, Sergeant." Williams gave a slow nod. Respect, grudging and real. But the only opinion that mattered remained silent. She felt his eyes on her all morning, measuring, dissecting, searching for weakness, for hesitation. He gave nothing away. No praise, no criticism, just relentless observation. As the helicopters prepared for pickup, he finally spoke. "Walk with me." They climbed a ridge, the mountains stretching out before them like a graveyard of empires. Beauty and danger woven into every line of stone. "Your shooting this week has been exceptional," said, his voice even. "I've worked with snipers who couldn't make those shots under ideal conditions. You made them in wind and darkness." Maria waited. She knew there was a blade in his words, waiting to be unsheathed. But training exercises aren't combat. Paper targets don't bleed. When we go operational, you'll be looking through that scope at real people. Fathers, sons, people who die when you squeeze that trigger. Maria turned toward him, her dark eyes steady. "My brother was killed by a Taliban IED 3 years ago. He was a medic. He died trying to save lives. Every time I look through this scope, I think about preventing another family from going through what mine did. I don't take it lightly, Commander. I never will." Studied her face. No bravado, no fear, just the quiet certainty of someone who had carried pain long enough for it to become steel. "The real test is coming," he said finally. "Operation Crosswind isn't training, if you're not ready." "I'm ready," Maria cut in. Her voice was soft, but it carried conviction like a blade unsheathed. "I've been ready since the day I enlisted." The sound of rotor blades swept over them, the helicopters approaching for extraction. Gave a short nod, but his eyes lingered on her face. She was forcing him to believe. Against his will, against his doubts, against the ghosts of the men he'd lost, she was making him believe. For the first time since her name appeared on his orders, he wondered if he might have been wrong. And in war, admitting that possibility could mean the difference between life and death. What chance did 6 people have against a fortress? The bunker hummed with the constant murmur of machines, the glow of screens throwing pale green light across tense faces. Radios whispered intercepted chatter in Pashto. Satellite uplinks scrolled data in endless streams. It was the heartbeat of Airfield, a place where wars were planned in silence and shadows. Commander Jake stood at the front, jaw set, hands resting on the edge of the table. His 5 SEALs sat around him, each man hardened by a dozen missions that would never be recorded in history books. And there among them sat Staff Sergeant Maria. She could feel the weight of their stares, the curiosity, the doubt. The question no one wanted to speak aloud: would she break them or save them? Colonel Sarah, the base intelligence officer, clicked a remote. A new image appeared on the main screen. a bearded man in traditional Afghan dress, his eyes dark and cold. "That's," said, her voice crisp, "weapons coordinator for the Taliban in the southern region. For 3 years, he's been the architect of the IED networks that have killed over 400 coalition soldiers." The silence grew heavier. Maria felt her chest tighten as she stared at the photo. The face was ordinary, middle-aged, lined with time. But behind those eyes was the mind of a man who turned steel, wires, and hatred into weapons that tore bodies apart and sent families into years of grief. Her brother's coffin rose unbidden in her mind. The intercepted audio played through the speakers, voices layered with static but translated in real time, was arranging a meeting, weapons shipments, payment schedules, logistics. But then the words that made the room go still: "A compound in the valley, tomorrow night." "This," said, tapping the satellite imagery that replaced the photograph, "is the opportunity we've been waiting for. His suppliers, multiple high-value targets in one location." Maria leaned forward slightly. The compound wasn't a shack in the desert. It was a fortress, thick mud-brick walls, 4 corner guard towers, overlapping fields of fire, multiple fallback positions. It was designed to repel attacks and bleed out anyone foolish enough to try. Petty Officer Danny Martinez muttered, "Looks like a goddamn castle." Didn't argue. Estimated 15 to 20 fighters inside, armed with AKs, RPGs, and at least one heavy machine gun. Guard towers here, 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 and here. She pointed to each corner. Motion sensors along the eastern approach, roving patrols. Defensive layout suggests they're expecting an assault. "And reinforcements?" asked, his voice steady but tight. "Response time from known Taliban positions, 12 to 15 minutes, but intelligence suggests contingency plans. Worst case, they could have fighters here in under 8 minutes." The room went quiet again. 8 minutes. To infiltrate, eliminate, destroy, and before being swallowed by overwhelming numbers. Even for SEALs, it was a suicide timetable. His eyes roamed across the map. He traced potential approach routes, every one of them exposed. Open ground. Kill zones. Every step toward those walls meant stepping into crossfire. His team would need a miracle. The kind of miracle Maria had been waiting for her entire life to provide. She studied the imagery, her mind calculating angles, distances, lines of fire. Then she saw it. Northwest of the compound, 800 meters out. From that position, she realized the entire facility was exposed. Every tower, every gate, every window. "Commander," she said, her voice breaking the silence. Every head turned toward her, some expectant, some skeptical. His gaze was steady, unreadable. "The compound's defenses suggest they're preparing for a ground assault. Guard towers, machine gun nests, patrols. They're set to kill anyone who comes through the walls." She pointed to the on the satellite map. "But from here, Northwest Ridge, an Overwatch sniper has clear sight lines to the entire facility. Guard towers, entrances, even interior courtyards. From this position, I can neutralize threats before your team reaches the walls." She stopped, realizing what she was volunteering for. Alone, isolated, 800 meters out, dependent on success for extraction. If the mission failed, she would be stranded, surrounded, and hunted. For a moment, no one spoke. Stepped closer to the map, his eyes narrowing at the terrain. She was right. The position gave complete dominance over the compound. The only question was whether the person holding that rifle was strong enough to shoulder the burden. "That position would be effective," said carefully, "but also suicidal if things go wrong. If we're compromised during insertion, you'll be cut off. No support, no fallback." Maria met his eyes. "Commander, without taking out those towers, your team won't make it 50 meters. From the ridge, I can dismantle their defense before they know what hit them. It's the only chance." Rotated the 3D terrain model. She's right. From here, a marksman could eliminate the guard towers in under a minute. That could swing the odds dramatically in your favor. The room buzzed with uneasy agreement. Teams shifted in their seats, the reality sinking in. Their survival depended on her. His gaze locked on Maria, searching for hesitation, for bravado, for cracks in her resolve. He saw none, only that quiet determination that had unsettled him since the day she arrived. "This isn't about hitting paper targets anymore," he said, his voice low but sharp. "This is combat. You'll be alone. You'll be looking through your scope at men who will die if you pull that trigger. Are you prepared to carry that weight?" She thought of her mother's tears. She thought of every soldier whose name was whispered at memorials, every folded flag, every grave. "I'm prepared," she said softly. "This is why I'm here." For the first time didn't see hesitation. He saw himself, 15 years ago, burning with resolve, carrying ghosts that never left. And in that moment he knew she wasn't bluffing. He turned back to the map. Insertion at 2,000 hours. Helicopters drop us 3 kilometers out. You'll climb to the ridge. We'll breach at 2200 when arrives. You'll have 1 hour to establish overwatch. If you miss, he stopped himself. No need to finish the sentence. Everyone in the room knew the cost. "Any questions?" No one spoke. As the team stood to leave, caught Maria's arm. They stopped by the door, the noise of chairs scraping fatting behind them. "Tomorrow night," he said, his voice low. "My men's lives will depend on you. These aren't targets. They're husbands, fathers, people with families waiting at home. I need to know you understand the weight of that." Maria nodded once. "I understand. I won't let them down." For a long moment studied her. Then, for the first time since her file crossed his desk, he extended his hand. "See that you don't," he said, "because if this mission fails, we're all going home in boxes." She shook his hand, feeling the weight of his doubt pressing down on her shoulders. But behind that doubt, for the first time, she also felt something else. Respect. As the team filed out into the night, Maria lingered by the map, her eyes fixed on the compound. 800 meters, 4 towers, unknown fighters inside. Tomorrow night she would have her chance. And tomorrow night, the world would learn what she already knew. Sometimes the only thing standing between survival and annihilation was a single person, steady behind a scope. How long can silence hold before it breaks? The valley stretched out like a wound in the earth, a black scar between jagged ridges where shadows swallowed everything. Helicopter rotors beat the night sky as the SEAL team crouched low, weapons ready, packs heavy with gear. At 2,000 feet, the Chinooks hovered silently, their engines muted by suppressors designed for insertion. The air was thin, cold, carrying with it the scent of dust and gun oil. Maria felt the vibration in her bones as her boots touched Afghan soil. The darkness pressed in immediately, thick, suffocating, alive with unseen danger. Every step away from the helicopter was a step into uncertainty. 2 clicks to the objective. His voice came over comms, calm and steady. "Move fast, stay low." The team split into 2 elements, led his 5 men along the valley floor, hugging the riverbed. Maria broke away alone, climbing the slope that would take her to the Overwatch ridge. The weight of her rifle pressed into her shoulder, her pack cutting into her back. Every movement was calculated, deliberate. The climb was steep, loose rock shifting beneath her boots, but she pressed on. Halfway up, she paused to catch her breath, the cold air burning her lungs. The ridge loomed above like a jagged crown. She looked down for a moment, and his men were no more than shadows now, moving like phantoms through the terrain. She was already separated from them, and the gap would only widen. The loneliness pressed against her like a physical weight. In training, she'd always been surrounded by others. Even if they doubted her, they were there. Now she was truly alone. One mistake, one slip, one sound too loud, and she would never see dawn. Her radio crackled, his voice, "Overwatch 1 status." She pressed her throat mic, "Climbing, 200 meters to ridge." "Copy, keep moving. We're approaching outer perimeter. She resumed the climb. The silence of the valley was broken only by her controlled breathing, the grind of rock under boots. At last she reached the ridge. She crawled forward, belly pressed to the earth, and set her rifle on its bipod. The world narrowed to her scope. The compound filled her vision. Mud brick walls thick as fortress ramparts. 4 towers silhouetted against the moonlight. Faint heat signatures moved along the walls. 2 guards in Tower 1. Another in Tower 2. 2 more packing near the eastern gate. Maria adjusted her scope, logging every movement. Her voice stayed low, calm. Alpha Leader, this is Overwatch 1. I have visual. 5 guards spotted, all in designated towers and gate. His reply was immediate. Copy that. Hold your fire until we're in position. She breathed deep. The rifle was steady beneath her, her heartbeat controlled, her finger light on the trigger. This was the moment, the line she had trained for, the line that separated paper targets from human beings. She had never killed a man before. She had trained, prepared, imagined it 1,000 times. But imagination was nothing against reality. Through the scope, she watched one of the guards in Tower 1 scratch his beard, his other hand gripping his rifle lazily. A living, breathing human being. A son, maybe a father. She thought of his laugh, his hands guiding hers on the old Winchester. The rifle doesn't know you're a girl, but the animal sure as hell will know if you miss. Her chest tightened. Could she really pull this trigger when it wasn't an animal but a man? Overwatch 1's voice cut into her hesitation. We're moving in. Neutralize towers on my mark. The world shrank. The guard scratched his beard again. His silhouette was clear, perfectly framed. Her finger brushed the trigger. Mark! The rifle cracked, thunder rolling across the valley. The guard dropped instantly, his body slumping against the wall. In the same breath, she shifted, fired again. The second man fell before his partner's body hit the ground. Tower 1 neutralized, she whispered, her voice betraying nothing of the storm inside her. Below's team sprinted across open ground. Maria pivoted, her scope finding the second tower. Another guard leaned casually, AK slung across his chest. Her shot tore through him, dropping him without a sound. She transitioned instantly to Tower 3. Another squeeze. Another body fell. 3 towers down, she reported. Her voice was steady, almost too steady. But her heart was hammering in her chest. She had just killed men. Real men, not paper, not mannequins. The weight of it pressed on her chest like a stone. She forced herself to keep breathing, to stay steady. There would be time to feel later. For now, only survival mattered. The compound stirred. Shouts echoed faintly. Shadows scrambled along the walls. The element of surprise was fading. Overwatch 1, they're alerted, said sharply. Clear the gate. 2 guards sprinted toward the heavy iron gate. Maria tracked them, her finger a whisper on the trigger. 2 shots, 2 collapses. The gate is clear, she whispered. The seals reached the wall, charges planted with swift precision. The explosion shattered the valley's silence, a plume of dust rising into the night. And his men flooded through the breach like shadows, their rifles barking in controlled bursts. Maria swung her scope across the compound. Fighters were pouring from barracks, rifles raised. She moved faster than thought, each shot a cold calculation. 1 at the courtyard, 1 at the far tower, 1 dropping to his knees before he could raise his RPG. Her radio erupted with his voice. Overwatch, multiple contacts, rooftop east. She pivoted instantly. 3 fighters on the roof, firing down at the seals below. She dropped them 1 by 1, each shot precise. Each life ended before the muzzle flashes could land a hit. The fight was chaos now, shouts, gunfire, the crack of explosions as the seals moved through the compound. Maria remained motionless, eyes to the scope, her body the still center of the storm. Every shot she fired was another life extinguished, another man who would never walk away. She didn't let herself think about their names, their families. She thought only of angles, wind, trajectory. the math of survival. Minutes stretched like hours. The compound was becoming a graveyard. Smoke curled from shattered walls. Her shots had silenced towers, gates, rooftops. His team was pushing deeper. But then the radio crackled with words that made her blood run cold. Alpha Leader, this is 2. RPG team spotted North Ridge, 200 meters out, preparing to fire on us. Maria snapped her scope toward the ridge. Heat signatures, 3 men crouched behind rocks, one aiming an RPG at the compound. Distance, 900 meters, wind shifting, almost impossible, almost. Her breath slowed. Her finger caressed the trigger. She fired. The first man dropped. The second grabbed the RPG tube. Another shot. Another body down. The third tried to fire, panic in his movements. Maria's bullet caught him mid-launch, detonating the warhead in a fiery burst that lit the night sky. The valley shook with the explosion. For a moment, silence. Then's voice, calm but edged with awe. Overwatch 1, that just saved our lives. Keep covering us. Her hands trembled slightly on the rifle, not from fear but from the enormity of it. Real combat, real men, real death. She was no longer just a shooter, she was a killer. And tonight, for the first time, she realized she would carry that truth for the rest of her life. What keeps a soldier steady when the world falls apart? The compound was fire and thunder now, the kind of chaos only war could conjure. Gunfire cracked from doorways and windows, echoing off the mud-brick walls. Muzzle flashes burst like lightning in the dark, followed by screams that were swallowed by dust and smoke. SEAL team moved like shadows through the carnage, precise, efficient, lethal. But even shadows bled when the storm was heavy enough. From her perch on the ridge, Maria had become the storm's anchor. Her world was reduced to the circle of her scope, the shifting silhouettes of fighters trying to regroup, the heat signatures that betrayed men hiding behind cover. Every time she squeezed the trigger, another rifle went silent, another man crumpled. Overwatch 1, this is Alpha 3. Williams' voice broke through the comms, raw with urgency. Contact rear, multiple tangos pushing through the breach. Maria swung her scope. The dust parted enough to reveal 5 fighters pouring through the hole blasted in the wall, rifles raised towards men. Her finger pulled. One dropped. She fired again, the second staggered back, chest torn open. 2 more shots, 2 more lives ended. The last tried to crawl to cover, but Maria's bullet caught him through the shoulder, snapping him against the stone. Rear secured, she whispered. Copy that, Williams replied, his voice a mix of relief and disbelief. But there was no relief for Maria. She kept moving faster, her scope hunting constantly. Sweat rolled down her spine despite the cold. Her mouth was dry. Her hands were steady, but her heart was not. Every man she killed left a shadow inside her. They stacked quickly, pressing down like stones in a riverbed. She tried not to think about them. She told herself she was saving lives, not taking them. But the bodies piling in her scope told a harsher truth. Inside the compound, his voice thundered through the comms. Alpha 1, push right, clear that corner. His team responded instantly, boots pounding against stone, rifles barking. But Maria saw what they couldn't, a fighter on the rooftop above them, RPG balanced on his shoulder, waiting for the perfect angle. Alpha Leader, rooftop north, she snapped. Didn't hesitate. He dove sideways, dragging Martinez with him. Maria's shot rang out a heartbeat later, punching through the gunner's chest. The RPG tube tumbled from limp hands, clattering uselessly to the ground. Overwatch said, his breathing heavy. Good eyes, you just saved 2 of my men. Her chest tightened. She wanted to answer, but words caught in her throat. She wasn't sure she could carry the sound of pride in her own voice. Not now. Gunfire roared again, closer this time. The SEALs breached the central courtyard, where the last resistance was digging in. Maria's scope followed them, her eyes scanning constantly for threats. Fighters emerged from doorways, from shadows, from stairwells. She dropped them as fast as they appeared, her shots cracking like a metronome against chaos. But then it happened. moved through the courtyard, his rifle raised. Dust and smoke swirled around him. For a split second, Maria's scope tracked over his shoulder. Behind him, a shadow moved, an enemy slipping through the chaos, rifle raised, sights locked on's unprotected back. The man was only 20 meters away. Too close, too fast, had no idea. Maria's finger tightened, but hesitation clawed at her. The distance was too small, her line of fire too narrow. One mistake, one stray inch, and her bullet would hit instead of the man behind him. Her breathing slowed. Her body froze into stillness. She heard his voice in memory. The rifle doesn't forgive. Make sure you're ready before you ask it for trust. She pulled the trigger. The enemy dropped instantly, his body collapsing at its boots. Spun, eyes widening as he saw the lifeless man at his feet. Slowly his gaze turned upward toward the ridge, toward her. For the first time, Commander Jake's voice carried something new over the comms. Not doubt, not challenge, gratitude. "Overwatch 1," he said softly. "That shot just saved my life." The words landed heavier than any bullet. Maria felt something shift inside her, something fragile and dangerous. His life, his survival, his belief in her. She had wanted respect. She hadn't realized it would come at such a cost. The firefight raged on. Maria pushed the thought away, focusing on the job. More fighters poured from the barracks, some carrying heavy weapons. Her scope found them, her bullets silenced them. But fatigue was creeping in. Her eyes burned from staring through the scope. Her shoulder ached from the rifle's recoil. Her mind screamed against the weight of death she was doling out. Still, she did not stop. Inside the compound's team fought room by room. Grenades shattered walls, rifles barked in deadly rhythm. Maria tracked every movement, guarding them from threats they couldn't see. Every time a fighter tried to ambush them, her rifle spoke first. Minutes passed like hours. The compound floor was littered with bodies now, the defenders broken, their resistance faltering. Smoke drifted lazily through the night, lit by flames that devoured what once had been barracks and storerooms. At last, his voice came through, sharp but calmer. "Alpha leader to Overwatch, interior clear. Repeat, interior clear." Maria exhaled, her body sinking against the ridge. For the first time since the mission began, she allowed herself to blink, to breathe deeply. But relief was dangerous. The night wasn't finished. "Movement," Martinez shouted over comms. "East wall, reinforcements incoming." Maria swung her scope east. Her blood froze. Dozens of heat signatures crested the ridge. Reinforcements, Taliban fighters rushing to the compound. Too many. Her voice was steady despite the fear clawing at her ribs. "Alpha leader, you have 20+ hostiles approaching from the east. Estimated contact in 2 minutes." The radio went silent for half a breath. Then's voice returned, grim but calm. "Copy that, Overwatch. We hold here until buy us time." Maria's hands tightened around her rifle. 20 men, maybe more. Her scope was steady, her mind screaming at her body to keep moving. One shot at a time, one man at a time. But deep inside, she knew the truth. The real fight had only just begun. How many lives can one trigger pull change? The night had grown heavier, as though the mountains themselves leaned closer to watch. The ridge beneath Maria's chest felt like ice, her body pressed low, her rifle steady, her heart hammering like a drum. Through her scope, the east ridge lit with movement, dozens of fighters pouring down toward the compound, rifles raised, voices shouting into the night. "Overwatch 1, this is Alpha Leader," his voice cut in, taut and urgent. "We're low on ammo and locked inside the courtyard. If they reach us, it's over. You have to hold them." "Hold them." Her finger brushed the trigger, her breathing slowed. Her mind blocked out the enormity of the task. She couldn't think about 20 fighters, she couldn't think about minutes. She could only think about the man in her crosshairs, one at a time, one breath, one pull. The first shot cracked. A fighter collapsed mid-stride. The second dropped before his rifle could clear the dirt. The third fell backward, arms splayed. Her world shrank to rhythm. Inhale, exhale, squeeze. Each shot echoed against the mountains like a heartbeat, each pause a beat of silence before thunder returned. Overwatch 1, keep firing, shouted, gunfire roaring behind his voice. She did, shot after shot. 6, 7, 8. They fell like dominoes, the slope littered with broken bodies. She was faster now, her hands moving with mechanical precision, her eyes burning as she forced herself to stay sharp. But the fighters kept coming. 10 left, then 9, then 8. Her scope caught a flash, an RPG team setting up on the ridge. Her chest clenched. One rocket would end everything. She shifted, lined up, squeezed. The gunner fell before he could lock onto the compound. She fired again, silencing the loader. Another burst, and the RPG tube rolled uselessly down the rocks. Overwatch, Martinez's voice shouted in her ear, ragged with adrenaline. That was too damn close. Keep it up. Her body screamed against the strain. Her shoulder throbbed from recoil, her eyes burned from the scope's relentless circle. She wanted to rest, just 1 second, but rest meant death, so she kept firing. 9 minutes into the assault, she had already fired more shots than she had in any training exercise. The numbers blurred together. 10 kills, 11, 12. Each one etched into her soul, each trigger pull carving away something inside her she knew she could never reclaim. The 13th came harder. A fighter broke through, sprinting closer than the rest, his rifle raised towards pinned-down team. Maria tracked him through the chaos, her vision tunneling, sweat dripping into her eyes. For a heartbeat, the world slowed, the man's feet pounding the dirt, the muzzle of his rifle rising, his men too slow to react. She squeezed. The man dropped mid-stride, his weapon clattering uselessly as dust swallowed him. Her throat went dry, her hands trembled. 13 men, 13 in less than 5 minutes. The number sat in her chest like a stone, heavy, immovable. She forced herself to keep breathing, to keep scanning, but the weight pressed down like never before. Overwatch, his voice came again, lower this time, steadier. We're still here because of you, don't stop now. She swallowed hard. Copy. Her voice was a whisper, raw and frayed. The assault was faltering now. The slope was littered with bodies, the survivors scattering, their momentum broken. The SEALs in the courtyard seized the moment, surging forward with rifles barking, grenades tearing through the last clusters of resistance. The valley roared with violence one final time, then fell eerily still. Smoke curled into the sky. The compound was wreckage, fire licking at shattered walls. The night echoed only with the wind and the distant, retreating shouts of survivors who dared not continue the fight. Maria's rifle lowered slowly, the scope slipping from her weary eye. She lay back against the ridge, her chest heaving, her hands trembling uncontrollably now that the shooting had stopped. For the first time in hours, silence returned. But it was not peace. It was the silence of aftermath, the silence where ghosts whispered. Overwatch 1, this is Alpha Leader. His voice was steady but softer than before. Status. She pressed her mic, her throat felt raw. 13 down, ridges clear, I'm still here. There was a pause, then spoke again, and his words carried something Maria had never heard from him until now. Hell of a thing you just did. You didn't just hold them, you saved us all. The comms went quiet again, but those words stayed. They pressed against her chest, heavier than the rifle she cradled. She had wanted respect. She had earned it. But the cost was carved into every body on that slope. She closed her eyes. His face flickered in the darkness behind her lids. His voice echoed faintly. Sometimes dignity doesn't shout, it doesn't beg, it just does what has to be done. For the first time since her boots touched Afghan soil, Maria felt tears burn the edges of her eyes. She let them fall silently into the dirt, unseen, unheard. The battle was over. The mission was not. Awaited. But tonight, Maria had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. And as she rose to rejoin the team, rifle heavy in her hands. She knew nothing in her life would ever be the same. How do you walk away from a battlefield when pieces of yourself are still lying there? The night was broken, fractured by smoke, gunpowder, and the stench of blood. The compound burned behind them, flames curling upward like orange ghosts against the black Afghan sky. The valley was quiet now, too quiet. The kind of silence that only came after death had done its work. Commander Jake stood in the courtyard, scanning the wreckage with sharp eyes. His team regrouped around him, bruised, bloodied, but alive. Danny Martinez leaned against a wall, reloading by muscle memory. Tony Williams checked the blast wounds on his shoulder, grimacing but still upright. They were battered, exhausted, but still standing. And every man knew why. Because of her. Overwatch 1 status check, said into his comm. From the ridge, Maria's voice came through, steady but soft. Holding position. Ridge is secure. No more movement on the valley approaches. Her words carried exhaustion, the weight of every trigger pull she'd made. 13 men in 5 minutes, and more before that. Her voice didn't brag, it didn't boast. It was quiet, almost fragile, like someone trying to convince herself she was still human. Hesitated before replying. Stay sharp, bird inbound in 10. Copy, she whispered. The SEALs began their withdrawal, moving like shadows through the breach in the wall. Lingered a moment longer, his eyes sweeping the ridge where she lay. She was a dark silhouette against the lighter stone, motionless, her rifle still trained outward even though the fight was done. Duty, discipline, silent resilience. He doubted her. He'd questioned her. He'd almost refused to let her be part of this mission. And now he realized he and every man on his team owed their lives to the steady hand of the woman on that ridge. The extraction zone was 2 kilometers out, down the valley floor where dust already swirled from the incoming Chinook. The team moved quickly, weapons raised, eyes sharp. Maria descended from her ridge alone, boots slipping on loose rock, her body aching with every step. The rifle felt heavier now than it had ever felt before, as though the weight of every death was inside its steel frame. When she reached the valley floor, the SEALs glanced at her, just glances. No words, but those glances carried something new: respect. Not the grudging kind she'd seen before, not the skeptical kind. This was real, earned in fire. Fell in beside her as they moved. For a while neither spoke. The sound of their boots crunching on rock filled the silence. Finally broke it. You did more than anyone had a right to expect tonight, he said. His tone was quiet, stripped of command, stripped of rank. Just a man speaking to another. I've lost good men because Overwatch wasn't fast enough, wasn't steady enough. Tonight you were both. You saved us. Maria kept her eyes forward. I just did my job, Commander. Studied her profile in the dim light. Her face was calm, but her eyes told the truth. They carried shadows now, shadows that never left. Doing your job doesn't always mean living with it, he said. That's the part they don't train you for. She swallowed hard. For a moment she wanted to tell him everything, about her mother's tears, about the years of carrying grief like a stone in her chest. But the words caught in her throat. Some stories weren't meant to be told aloud. Some were carried in silence. The Chinook thundered into view, its searchlights cutting across the valley. Dust kicked up, stinging their eyes. The SEALs boarded quickly, helping one another, patting shoulders, checking gear. Maria followed, climbing into the dim, vibrating belly of the bird. She slid into a seat against the wall, her rifle across her lap. The rotor wash drowned everything in deafening roar. But inside, there was another kind of silence, the silence of men who had walked through fire together. Martinez glanced at her, his usual cocky smirk gone. He raised a fist, not mocking, not sarcastic, just a simple gesture, respect. She met it with her own, quiet and steady. Williams gave her a slow nod, his massive frame leaning against the bulkhead. His eyes said what his mouth didn't: you belong here. Sat across from her, helmet off, his hair damp with sweat. He studied her for a long moment, then leaned forward so she could hear him over the roar. "You carried us tonight," he said, "and I won't forget it." Maria looked down at her rifle, then back at him. Her voice was almost a whisper, but it cut through the noise. "I won't forget it either." The flight back to was long, filled with the steady thrum of rotors. Some men closed their eyes, grabbing fractured moments of rest. Maria stared out the open door at the mountains passing below. Dark ridges, empty valleys, a land that swallowed men whole. Somewhere out there, 13 bodies lay cooling on the stones. She wondered if they had mothers, brothers, sisters who would mourn them. Her chest tightened. She pushed the thought away. Survival demanded it, but deep inside she knew those faces would never leave her. The Chinook landed at under the cover of dawn. Pale light crept across the horizon as they disembarked, dust rising under their boots. Colonel was waiting, her arms crossed, her sharp eyes taking in the returning team. She didn't ask what had happened. She didn't need to. The look in their eyes told her everything. Gave his report, clipped and professional. Compound neutralized. Confirmed KIA, minimal casualties, mission successful. Nodded, her gaze flicking briefly to Maria. For a moment, something softened in the colonel's expression. Then it was gone, replaced by the hard mask of command. "Get some rest, you've earned it." The team dispersed, heading toward barracks, showers, anywhere but here. Maria lingered, her rifle still slung across her back. Approached her one last time. "You came here under doubt," he said, his voice low. "My doubt, my team's doubt, hell, maybe even your own. But tonight you erased it. You proved something most people never get the chance to prove." Maria's eyes met his. "That I can kill." Shook his head slowly. "That you can carry the weight, most can't, most break, you didn't." She said nothing. The words hung in the air between them. As she turned to walk away, added quietly, "Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts." Her steps faltered. The words struck her deeper than she expected. She turned back once but was already walking away, his silhouette swallowed by the early light. Maria kept walking, her boots crunching against gravel. The rifle pressed into her back like a burden she would never put down. 13 lives in 5 minutes. Her hands had delivered death. Her resolve had held a team together, and her silence would carry the story long after words had faded. She walked into the rising sun, her face steady, her shoulders squared. No medals would ever capture what had happened. No headline would ever tell the truth. But somewhere in the mountains behind her, the echoes of her shots still lingered. And in that silence, the world had changed.